Welcome to This Week from the Principal's Desk, a podcast about Lutheran schools and their leadership. This podcast is hosted by two Lutheran school leaders. My name is Rob Lunak, and I'm the superintendent of Lutheran neighborhood schools in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
My name is Mike Sheeman. I'm principal at Bethany Lutheran School in Parma, Ohio. And today we have welcomed our students back after Christmas break. It's actually been a couple of days. And one of the things that we always wonder after the kids come back from a long break is, how's it going to go? Are they going to remember how to behave in school? Are they going to be tired? What are the stories that they're going to have to tell? And actually, I have to say, we've had a pretty good week here. The first day back, the kids were lethargic. Oh my goodness, it was so quiet around here. We had chapel and you could hear a pin drop. It was kind of funny, but we're a few days into it now. And the students are really kind of back in the groove. Routine has been established. But I really feel like the success that we've experienced this week goes back a lot further than just a couple of days being back after Christmas break. It goes all the way back to the beginning of the school year. And what Rob and I are going to talk about today has to do with classroom management and talk a little bit about how do you set those routines and establish rules in your classroom? How are they enforced? And how does that lead to success throughout the entire school year, leading actually to success or potentially going the other way? Classroom management is something that I know we talk about a lot as educators or as administrators, but we hope to have a conversation just a little bit around the principles of classroom management and share some ideas on ways that you can establish a successful classroom that'll last you through the whole year.
Yeah, I don't know how we haven't spoken about this topic before, but looking back through notes and other episodes, we haven't covered classroom management, not as
Nope.
its own episode. And it's one of those things that I think we probably took for granted. We go, oh, everyone already knows this because you have classes on it. But thinking back to my time as a brand new teacher, a lot of the things I learned, didn't really hold true when the rubber met the road. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, wait a second. This is a lot harder than everyone made it sound. And when you have your mock lessons or whatever, you're doing your student teaching, somebody's already kind of built that into the kids for a lot of that. So you're like, oh, okay, now I gotta do it on my own. How do I do that? And for me, it really came down to being clear with kids and then approaching everything through a lens of like love, respect, and Jesus, honestly. So, hey, here are rules, and here's why we have these rules. And I'm going to respect you, and you're going to respect me, and you're going to respect the people in your classroom, and we're going to be kind to one another, and we're going to be polite, and we're going to work hard, all those things that go into that. And that's one of those things. Your classroom management, if you're a brand new teacher listening to this and you go, I don't know what I'm doing, you'll get better. You're going to have to figure that out, right? You will get better. And if you're a veteran, hopefully you've got it nailed down, but there's always room to improve because honestly, things change. Things get harder. Right? 20 years ago, you didn't have to worry about phones, really. Now you got to worry about phones. How do you manage that? And like parents say a kid can have it, and a kid's like, well, I want to have it, or I got TikTok or whatever. Things all of a sudden are different. But the basis is that we want to have a system in place so kids know what's expected of them so they can show up and get to work and have fun at school.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when you're talking about things that change, one of the most important things that changes too is the kids every year. And so some of the things that you've done in years past may not work with this group of kids. And so it makes it hard when you start off the year. You don't really know the students. I mean, you can talk to the teacher the previous year and get that feel for them, but the kids have changed over the summer too. And so you want to establish a classroom where they still feel valued. They feel like they can take risks, that they can learn in a thriving environment. But there are some rules that need to be followed for the sake of everybody's learning experience. And so it is something you need to consider early on. And one of the things I know there's been a struggle with teachers that I have talked to has to do with the kids that say, but that's not fair. This kid got that and I didn't get that, and that's not fair. And one of the principles that we used in our school here is the difference of what is fair versus equal. And you can look this up online. There's actually a cartoon that does a really nice job of demonstrating fair versus equal. There's three kids at a baseball game that are all different heights, and they're standing by the fence. And equal means each kid gets 2 blocks to stand on, and that's equal. But the tall kid can see over the fence, and the shortest kid, he still can't see, even though everything has been established equally. Whereas fair, the tall kid has no bricks, the short kid has 4 bricks, and the medium kid has 1, but they can all see over the fence. And kids have a really hard time understanding fair versus equal, where the application of your rules may look different in one scenario over another. And so we always talk about the real meaning behind the rules, that we're trying to show respect, we're trying to show love for one another, and we need to do that in a way that fits the situation. Now, there's going to be hard and fast rules that you're going to have. You have to raise your hand before you talk. You're not going to say, well, Johnny just has, verbal diarrhea, and so he's just going to spit that out, and that's his thing. Well, no, I mean, we still have to have an establishment of order in the classroom, but at the same time, certain kids might need different things over others, and so you want to consider that. But it is something that's a dance that you have to dance, right? You really need to understand where it's all coming from. So establishing a base level or a ground zero for what we want to do as a class, it is really important. I don't know, Rob, have you seen that in the schools where you've been, and what does that kind of ground zero look like that you've seen?
Yeah, definitely. So I actually I did a stint as a early childhood teacher, right? It was fun. Kids are great, right? And one of the things I learned is that they all want to do the same thing, right? They all want the attention of the teacher. And if one kid gets something, everybody wants that thing. So a phrase I learned is, well, that's their special thing. And you can have a special thing, but it's not going to be their special thing. Your special thing will be different. So if this kid needs a break because he needs to go take a walk, that's his special thing. Your thing can be something else. And that helped have every kid realize that, hey, they're not all the same. And I'm going to treat them all fairly, but I'm not going to treat them all identically, right? So to your point there. But as for the baseline with kids, I would always try to prepare kids for situations that are going to come up so they knew what to do. So I explained to them, if I have to step out for a second, you guys know what to do. You don't need my constant direction because you know what's expected of you and you know what to do in these situations. If we're in the hall and another teacher wants to talk to me, what should you be doing? If we're in PE class and I need everybody quiet real quick, what should you be doing? And setting them up so they knew in all situations how to act, because behavior is situational. You're gonna act differently on the playground than you will in the cafeteria. You're gonna act differently in the classroom than you will in chapel. And laying out what that looks like for kids to say, here's the situation, here's the behavior that is required in this situation. And I was really, really clear with my kids about, hey, when do we need to turn that on and when can we turn that off? So I could say, hey, we're going to be working right now. It's okay for you guys to talk, but you guys know what the volume level is going to be. And if we need to refresh that and go down from that, we can. But here's what the expectation is for this moment. Or, you're working on free work, or, I need us to go from this classroom to this classroom. That's another one, hallway expectations, that a lot of schools will try and set school wide. Like, hey, we have a level 0 in the hallway. And I am okay with that if it's not done just because of where a school is located. And I'll explain that. I've been, I've been in rural schools, suburban schools, urban schools, and if you're in like an urban school and you're like, well, we got to do level 0 in the hallway, and then the suburban school doesn't do that, I'm like, okay, well, why are you doing it? And is it just because of where you're located? And if it's just because of where you're located, I really want you to evaluate that very closely and go, okay, what is my expectation for these kids? And is my expectation different because of where my kids are from or what my kids look like? And if it is, I want you to really look at that closely. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm saying you should be at least having the conversation about that, because in my, albeit limited experience, kids are capable of whatever we expect them to be capable of across the board. And so, do I personally think kids can talk in the hallway? Yeah, if they can turn it off when I tell them to. You need to be able to turn it off the second I tell you to. And if you can do that, great. And if you can do that without being loud, awesome. And if you can't do that, well, then instead of telling you you can't, I'm going to teach you how you can. Right? So little sidebar there. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I love the idea that you share about saying it, saying it over and over again, letting kids know, reminding them the expectations, like put it in a curriculum way. With math facts, we do math facts all year long, even though the concepts are changing all the time. Put classroom expectations as something like that, where you do need to remind them, okay, guys, remember, this was our rule, or this is how we're going to behave, or this is what we're going to do. I think what really couples well with that reminder, though, is consistency. As teachers, you need to be consistent in applying your classroom management principles, whatever they are, You need to be consistent, because one of the things that can frustrate a kid to no end, in fact, can even turn them off of school, is not knowing what teacher they're going to get today. If they walk in and the teacher has decided, today I'm going to be militant about enforcing classroom expectations, but tomorrow I'm going to be lackadaisical and be like, whatever, I can have fun with the kids today. That's one of the worst things for a kid. So there's going to be times where we're human. You're going to get frustrated that the kids aren't following the rules. And maybe you do raise your voice. Maybe you do enforce some sort of classroom discipline. But if the kids don't know what to expect, that's really going to cause them to struggle. I've seen that before, where it's actually struggling. Kids maybe don't even want to go into the classroom that day because they're afraid of what's going to happen. So having that consistent enforcement is going to be really important as well. Rob, I also like what you said too about how it can be situational. In this particular instance, guys, this is how we're going to behave. There's a respect that is established with the teachers. And as that respect is established with the kids, you have that freedom. I would say it maybe takes a little bit of time before you can get to that point to say, okay, guys, today it's this and tomorrow it's that. You need that consistency to begin with. But I think it does ebb and flow a little bit. One of the examples I have of that is we take our kids to Washington, D.C., our middle schoolers every other year. And we have a phrase that we use, and we teach this to the kids before we go, to say, listen, we're going to be in a public place, lots of people. We don't know what we're going to see, but we're not in a spot where we can say, guys, this is what we need to do right now, and then explain to you why. We actually have a phrase we use with the kids to say immediate obedience. I'm going to tell you something, and you are not allowed to ask me why. You need to simply comply. We can talk about it later, but I need immediate obedience from you. But we've already established the relationship with the kids that they trust us. And so we had to use it a couple of times at our last DC trip, and the kids are off doing something, and we say, we're going to give you a weird like in our heads, we're not telling the kids this, but we think this is a weird instruction that I need them to go do this. And I know they would ask why, but kids, here's the instruction: immediate obedience. They go do it, and we talk about it later. So that's just an example of how you can um, edit your classroom management for situational expectations as well. I don't know if you have stories like that too, Rob, where you've had to just kind of like on the fly, but because the kids are so solid with the teachers and the relationship is there, it gives you the latitude to do that.
Yeah, that relationship piece is really, really important. And so, first day of school, we go over rules and expectations, and then we jump right into like, hey, how's your summer? Tell me about you. And I would actually, at the end of every day, build in more relationship building. We did highs and lows at the end of every day. What was something great about today? What was something that wasn't so great about today? And you got to learn a little bit about the kids. They got to learn a little bit about each other. They got time to express themselves. Sometimes you get a kid that just wants to tell somebody how their day was going, especially in the middle school. So that's what they got to do. But that relationship piece, when they have that, you can help them discover this motivation to follow the rules because they see the benefit in them, or because they see the relationship they have with you and they don't want to damage that through breaking a rule. Very rarely will anybody follow a rule because it's the rule, even as adults. Every adult listening, do you make a complete 3-second stop at every stop sign? Or do you change that based on what's around? I, I
Be
think,
honest.
be honest. And our kids are the same way. They are not going to follow a rule for rule's sake. Even your absolute rule follower kid will every once in a while tweak one if it's going to benefit him. That's just how it goes. That's human nature. But if you can build in this relationship piece, hey, I don't fully understand this rule. I don't really like it, but I trust my teacher, but I like my teacher, but I respect my teacher, then I'm going to do that. Because we're asking kids to do things that are counter to their nature a lot of the time. Let's have another honest moment. In a staff meeting, is everybody quiet all the time waiting for the meeting to start? No. We're talking. We're loud. And we don't think we're that loud because we're also not the ones trying to control the volume in that room. But objectively, we're not much quieter than a classroom full of kids while we're waiting for those things. And so to be able to know when to turn that on, when to turn that off, when to follow that rule, and how to get kids to see the value in that, that's the really important part. And that there's no magic bullet. There's no one thing I can tell you that will fix that for everybody. You got to put in the work at the beginning and constantly to get that in. So it's always, here's my expectation. Hey, great job with this. Hey, this could have gone better. hey, right now we're going to do this thing next. Remember, I need these things from you. And that little bit of time you put in explaining those things and reinforcing those things goes a long way, because the kids know, okay, yes, my teacher put a bunch of rules up on a big sheet of paper at the beginning of the year. Oh, they mean all of them. Oh, we're actually doing that. Okay, this is for real. This isn't just like a first week thing. There's a saying that I heard student teaching: don't smile until Christmas. Now, luckily, my cooperating teacher didn't say that. I had some friends who like, yeah, they told me I can't smile till Christmas. And I'm like, well, they're joking, right? And they're like, no, they said you got to be really strict. And I disagree with that. I'll say you need to be consistent. The rules you have in August should be the rules you have in May. And if that means that you you have a hard time sometimes enforcing some of that, then you got to look at where you fell off in there. Because at the end of the day, you are the one who has total authority in your classroom as a teacher. The principal cannot come in and fix a classroom management situation for you. They can support you. They can help if a kid needs to be sent out, or a kid needs to be spoken with, or somebody needs to call parents. But the climate in your room is 100% in your control and your responsibility. Mike, thoughts?
Yeah, and what I'm thinking of as you're talking, Rob, is that teacher who might be listening that is saying, I've done all those things and my class is chaos. I'm frustrated. Yes, I set the expectations. I am applying them consistently, but classroom management is my biggest struggle right now, and I'm beyond frustrated. What do you say to a teacher like that? What I would encourage you with is to ask yourself, why is classroom management so important? Why would we devote so much time? There's classes on it. There's now a podcast on it. I mean, all those things. What's the point? What's the goal of your classroom management? Well, people would say, well, I want my kids to behave. I want my kids to learn. I would argue that it's deeper than that. I would say classroom management plays into the value that you want your kids to know you love them. That's the most important thing. And so if your classroom management right now is a problem for you, if it's something that is a frustration point for you, maybe ask yourself that question. How am I showing my kids that I love them through the way that I'm running my classroom? Now, you can reflect on that, and you could probably do it in a circular way and keep coming back to, well, I love them, so I want them to follow the rules, but they're not following the rules, but I love them. And away we go. There are teachers out there who are stellar at classroom management, who just ooze with classroom management. And I was never that teacher. It was something I always had to work at. I mean, it wasn't a weakness for me, but it wasn't my total strength. I had to put a lot of effort into it. But one of the things I would encourage you to do, and talk to your administrator about this, go and see other classes, go watch other teachers teach. You're going to see small things in their routines that maybe you could implement, and watch for the things. How do they handle the student that is constantly bouncing up and down in their chair? Because I guarantee they've got that kid and they're doing something that is working. How are they handling the kids with getting them all to be quiet, or writing their name on their worksheet, or a bathroom pass, or water fountain and water breaks, or whatever? Go in very intentionally to examine what other teachers are doing. I think that'll do two things. One is that it'll give you some ideas on what you could do. The other is it may even affirm some of the things you are doing, some of the things you think could be really frustrating you. Maybe that's what other teachers need as well. So get out, have a look and see. And one of the ways that I've done that at schools is to say to the teachers, I want you to go observe others. So come and let me know what you'd like to observe. If you're the kindergarten teacher and you want to go see a sixth grade social studies lesson, knock yourself out. Come tell me when, and I'm going to go cover your class so you can go observe another teacher. And that gave me, as the administrator, some huge value in getting to know the kids and seeing how that particular class was run when the teacher was out viewing somebody else. So huge value in that whole thing. But don't give up on classroom management, because that's the worst thing you can do is say, fine, kids, do whatever you want. I'm out. I've tried. You're a train wreck. That's not showing love for your kids. Constantly bring it back to the goal of why we exist as Lutheran schools. And maybe that's, people might think that's diving too deep on a topic like classroom management, but I would argue, no, it's not. It's totally tied in. Even classroom management is a reflection of sharing the love of God in Jesus.
Yeah, and I don't want to make it sound like I don't understand the realities of a classroom or that it's not difficult. I want to point
Mhm.
out that the day to day, how it goes is up to no one other than the teacher in the sense that you have control over how it goes. So if it's not going well, you are in a position to fix it. And that doesn't mean that things are wrong or that it's not hard, but that gives you a sense of ownership, and that should actually give you some hope, because if something's not going well, you can fix it. You can.
Mhm.
And every school's got the teacher that, like, when kids get into their room, it's just different. They figure, like, they're just really well behaved. When I got into teaching, my second call, and I had eighth grade for that year, and eighth grade homeroom, and a small school, so all the other eighth grade classes do a bunch of things. And I heard, oh, they're not really a great group, and they're kind of hard to work with, and they don't really work together well. And I'm like, okay, sure, we'll see what we can do. And by the end of the year, like, they were a close knit group, and they were really well behaved. But it took work. It does take work. But I want to be encouraging to say that the work can be done, and you can do it. Don't think that anything is outside of your realm of ability. You can do it.
Mhm.
It might be harder. It might be more difficult. It might need constant work, but you can do it. I just want to point that out. One of the things that I'll hear a lot when it comes to discipline is, what are consequences going to be? And are they public or are they private? And I would make it both. It depended. If I just need to ask a kid to stop talking, that's a real quick consequence. Hey, I need you to stop talking right now. We're working. Thanks. And then if you need to go have that conversation with the kid, that thank you and you walking away from that conversation happen at the exact same time, by the way. You're just gone. You're just assuming they're going to follow through. You're not going to, like, wait, because you've set up now this weird tension between you and that kid. Just thanks. Go. Get out of there. Go continue teaching. Go continue what you were working on. But even sending a kid to the hall for bigger conversations, hey, can you step out in the hall for a minute? And I would do that for good things and bad things to keep kids on their toes. So no kid would be like, why are you sending me to the hall? Because I'd be like, hey, can you go to the hall for a second? And I explained at the beginning, sometimes I'm going to ask you to step out of the room. And what you need to do in that scenario is just stand up and go step in the room. I don't need a comment from you. I don't need a question from you. I'll explain everything to you and to you alone when we're in the hallway. And, I would then sprinkle in, hey, that was great. I just want to point that out. I just wanted to say that I didn't want to embarrass you in front of everybody by telling you how great that was. Okay, thanks. Head right back in. So when I had to have a kid come out for something bad, that got rid of the what I do conversation, because the kid's like, maybe something's good gonna happen.
I love
and then we get to the hall and be like, hey, listen, not good actually, but now you don't have an audience to argue with me. So I need you to fix these things. And little tricks like that, you're gonna learn as you go, and everybody has one. And that's why classroom management is really a lot of an art and less of a science. Is there are a lot
Mhm.
of different ways, and it depends on situation, and it depends on the kids you have, and it depends on the day. What it should never depend on, and this is where it gets tough, is your mood. It can never depend on your mood. Your
Yeah.
rules have to be your rules, your expectations have to be your expectations, your treatment of kids has to be your treatment of kids, and none of it can depend on how your day as a teacher is going. And that sounds like a really high bar, because it is. Because it is a really high bar. But we expect the same professionalism out of people in a lot of other professions, honestly. Principals, teachers, firefighters, police officers, doctors. You can't have a bad day. And we've all been in situations where that person was having a bad day and they were a jerk, but you don't get that day. Sorry,
No.
Mike.
It's true. It's true. And it's hard. Um, so I'd encourage you as a teacher to figure out, if you are having a bad day, what are some things that can shake you out of that? Is it an espresso? Go get an espresso. Is it, that you need to well, I keep some of those stories handy of the fun ones where the kids, did something funny, or when you're having a good day, just jot something fun down that you can go back to on a day when you're really struggling. Rob, I'm glad you brought up consequences, because one of the things that I don't think we're ever going to get full agreement from our listeners on this particular topic, but is class-wide discipline. So your class is being loud, and you say you all are losing 5 minutes of recess. Um, I'm not necessarily I'm not a proponent of that. I know there are some people that are, but at the same time, I feel like um, is are you punishing kids that are following the rules? Is it that your entire class is talking, or are there those kids that are sitting there following the rules, but you have a frustration point as a teacher? So I do know that there are teachers that use that method, but I also encourage them take a good hard look at that, because you don't want to punish kids that are doing the right thing. And even in a moment when there are a bunch of kids that are doing the wrong thing, there are still kids that are not participating in that. So, Rob, what's your take on class-wide discipline?
Yeah, I would agree with you. There have been times where I've had to use it, and I've always gone up to the kids who are listening and like, "Hey, I know this feels really unfair right now, and I'm sorry. I'm going to make it up to you in this way. You're either going to get like some extra recess time later, or special treat at lunch or something. I'll try to figure something out because I know this seemed really unfair. Right now, it's the only option I had because I didn't have anywhere to send you. Sorry, right? You didn't do anything wrong. I just want to point that out. And I think the kids that are you're following the rules all the time kids get that. And you're
Mhm.
never giving them anything that is, usually it's like, hey, we're all going to sit here quietly, or we're all going to miss a recess, right? That's usually what the everybody thing is. It's not like everybody's going to have to write 500 pages on something. It's usually everyone's going to sit with their head down for a minute, and the kid's like, well, I wasn't doing anything. I'm like, I know, you're right, you weren't. And right now, this is just what we're all doing because this is the only thing I can come up with at the moment. I'll make it up to you, I promise, because you're right. You were being good. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
But if you can avoid it, definitely avoid it. I see it most often being used, either people they don't think there's any other tool they can use, or they're in a situation where there's literally nowhere else they can send those kids at the moment. Maybe the principal's out, maybe maybe the principal's teaching at the moment, maybe they got nothing else they can do to figure that out, and it's too many kids to like send a couple in the hall, right?
Mhm.
You go, I can't send 15 of them in the hallway. They'll just keep doing it in the hallway and they'll bother everyone else. So
Right.
very, very limited use, but you got to be very clear with the kids who weren't doing anything wrong that, hey, this wasn't you. But yeah,
Yeah.
other than that, if you can avoid it, please avoid it. I mean, would you, when you were driving, would you like to get a speeding ticket because everyone on the highway is doing 80 miles an hour?
Mhm.
No, probably not. So be clear with
Exactly.
that. Mike, I'm realizing that we are going to need a part two.
We
I,
are. I've got
I,
some other topics
I
to
think,
cover.
I
It's
think.
a long one.
Why don't we, we'll put a pin in this one right now,
Yep.
and we'll come back with a part two. And one of the things I think we'll work on for the part two, we should probably come up with a little kind of a one sheet front back thing we can hand out too. We should
Mhm.
probably come up with that, a little bit of a cheat sheet in a sense.
Yeah. No, I think that sounds good. Yeah, it's a deep topic. It's hard to cover this in 25 minutes, but I'm hoping that just some of what we said has resonated, or maybe even affirmed you. I really hope this podcast uplifts people who listen to it as well, to say, "Hey, I'm doing that. It's a good idea. I'm doing a good job," because you are. God is using you in the way that He intends to use you, and you're touching lives for Christ. So if you're struggling right now, if this is a hard topic for you, if this is something that frustrates you, know that you're not alone. Know that God is at your side, and He will fulfill His purpose through you.
That's a great way to put it. Do you want to close us in prayer today, and then we'll go?
Let's do it. Heavenly Father, we thank you for each and every student that is in our schools. God, we thank you for the opportunities that we have as educators to fill them with the knowledge of the world that you've created, but most importantly, to fill them with the knowledge of you. God, you never said that it would be easy. I know that we have struggles each and every day, that there are struggles that are obvious and that are seen, and there are struggles that are deep within. But we know that we're not alone. And so I pray that you would encourage and uplift all who are listening and all who are serving in our Lutheran schools, to know that they are fulfilling a purpose. I also let them know that lives are being changed, seeds are being planted, God, and you're watering those seeds. And we thank you for the faith that is being created and sustained in these kids. We ask that you would bless all of those who serve and listen, that they would be equipped, that they would be confident, that they would be uplifted, knowing that they serve you, and that you will never ever leave us, and your love sustains us through all things. I pray blessing on each and every person, God, in Jesus' name. Amen.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of From the Principal's Desk. If you found it helpful, please share it with someone else that can help. If you found it entertaining, please leave a rating or a review. And if you want to hear more episodes like this, subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a good week.